before Sig took over? Colt was printing so much money from the M4 before printing was even a term in the social media era. They were making big bucks for every M4 they sold to Uncle Sam. Back when Colt was the only business in town, they charged $520 per rifle in 1999. 3 years later, that number nearly doubled to $912. By 2004, it crossed the 4-digit price range. However, the Army eventually pushed back and was like, nah, this gotta stop. They squeezed some concessions out of Colt in 2006, but by the time the last sole source contract closed in 2010, the price had jumped to $1,200 per unit. And that's what happens when one company walks the government into a corner and they have no choice but to buy. This all started back in '94, when Colt held all the technical data packages, including proprietary specs that legally defined the M4 and who could sell to the military. Even if the Army gets the right to buy M4s from other manufacturers, which it did happen in 2009, but every rifle or part built by a competing manufacturer still owes Colt a 5% royalty cut through 2037. And any company that got access to the blueprints had to sign a non-disclosure agreement and also destroy all the data when the contract ended, and was banned from using any of it for commercial sales. In the public's eye, Colt was executing the M4 monopoly perfectly in the defense sector. But if Colt pulls the same shenanigans like they did in 1988, where FBI raided their factory over allegations of billing fraud, using substandard parts into service rifles, or repeats the 1990 strike that shut down the factory and missed military delivery schedules, everything crumbles. But for years, Colt's position in the US Army supply chain was essentially untouchable. Colt could charge the military whatever they wanted, while the military continued negotiating a better deal with Colt. And they were buying from them simply out of convenience. If you think nobody else could build a better gun during this time, you will be wrong. And this is where the pivotal part of the story takes place, when FN showed up in the M4 business. As the Army split an M4A1 contract in half to FN and gave the rest to Colt. The Army's message was clear, which was that one supplier for the Army's primary weapon was a risk they no longer accepted. Most people know FN makes these big machine guns like the SAW and the 240, but they have also been pumping out M4s at serious scale. By this point, the Army was treating the M4 as a commodity, because two manufacturers can make identical guns. If you ask, so what's the meaningful quality difference between them? There was none, until the Army told them to come up with an M4 replacement. Long story short, Colt's CM901 and FN SCAR didn't get any love from SOCOM to be the M4 killer to replace the M4. Fast forward, FN still got the machine gun market as of 2026, as well as providing M4s for the millions of non-close combat units. And Colt's got the deal to make M4s, supplying overseas countries like Iraq and the Balkans through the $40 million foreign military sales contract. It seems like the M4 rivalry between FN and Colt has entered its final chapter in the M4 lane. Heckler and Koch. Cook? Couch? Honestly, no one knows how to say it correctly. Just call it H&K. When the Germans got into the M4 game, they looked at everything Colt and FN were doing, and they were like, we don't want to just be the next guy making cheaper guns, okay? How about let's solve a real problem? And their answer was their short-stroke piston system to keep the bolt cooler and cleaner under sustained fire. And their XM8 and 416 even did better dealing with the dust test than the M4. And that distinction matters even more now than it did in 2004 when H&K first fielded the 416, because suppressor use across Western armies has expanded dramatically during this time. H&K definitely played their cards right, and all the pieces just fell in the right place at the right time. And then, the next thing you know is that Norway got their 416s. France got their 416s, the F version, to replace the Pharmas. And the US Marines got their M27s through a backdoor strategy to replace the belt-fed machine guns, but ended up at a scale that mostly retired their M4s and M16s. And then the German Bundeswehr expanded its 416-derived procurement from 118,000 systems to 250,000, which, if you look at it, this is the largest infantry rifle modernization program in NATO by unit count, and H&K is running it out of Europe. Colt Canada. Colt Canada isn't exactly the same company as the Colt in the US. They didn't try to be FN or chase production volume. The reputation starts with the C8, essentially a super M4 with a cold hammer forged heavy barrel that is more durable and more accurate than the American M4. They build their rifles under license from the main Colt office in the US, but the quality control and specialized features and everything else are strictly Canadian. The business model is boutique but strategic. While Colt US chases large export deals to the Middle East and the Balkans, Colt Canada focuses on NATO, Arctic, and European defense contracts across Northern Europe. Lewis Machine and Tool. LMT's pitch is to configure the M4 to the doctrine and climate and operational requirement and stay embedded in the supply chain through the entire service life. LMT is building a local maintenance ecosystem around those rifles, which makes the procurement relationship stick in ways a simple contract never could. Their monolithic rail integrates the upper receiver and handguard into a single piece of forged aerospace aluminum, with a proprietary barrel locking system so the retaining laser and optic zero won't be a pain in the butt for users. New Zealand's got the Mars L, and then Estonia followed soon after, with the R20 Rahe family rifles. Okay, the next one that we have to talk about is Knight's Armament, because they introduced a massive change that made the tactical carbine industry the way it is today. This is a small family-owned, Florida-based business called Knight's Armament Corporation. They're in the business of integrating high-tier systems for Tier 1 operators rather than making guns. So think of the rail interface system handguards. They paved the way for all types of 1913 attachments that you see flooding the market today. By winning Project Hunter from the UK, which was roughly a £90 million commitment for the KS-1, and they proved that a military is willing to pay a premium price if you can guarantee that the rifle will last longer and require less maintenance over 10 years. They convinced the UK that expensive but unbreakable is actually cheaper than cheap but frequently broken. For example, they overbuild the parts. Let's say a normal rifle bolt might break after 5,000 shots. KAC makes a special rounded bolt like the E3.2 bolt that lasts for 20,000 rounds. They find untapped engineering concepts from other engineering projects and blend them into firearms. And once they figured that out, they were basically sitting on a gold mine. And the same goes for the dimpled barrel that can do the same rapid cooling without the stress risers like in other fluted barrels. In terms of their prime distributor, Knight's also leverages Edgar Brothers in the UK. Think of them like Costco for B2B tactical distribution, plus doing some government contracts. Meaning it's kind of like buying the world's best race car and also have the master pit crew live in your own garage. So basically, they were buying the guarantee that your team has everything they need to win the race without ever having to call the factory for help. Ultimately, KAC isn't competing on price per unit. They are competing on the lowest total cost of mission failure, selling a relationship that ensures a Tier 1 operator's rifle is as reliable on year 10 as it was on day 1. The next one is SAKO. SAKO is offering both direct gas and short stroke piston variants inside the same ARG rifle family for Arctic field conditions. SAKO is in the business of making sure your country never has to beg a foreign government for rifles during a war. And that is the problem that SAKO solved for Finland and Sweden by building a good rifle right at home, so Swedish can pull parts from a Finnish stockpile mid-conflict. Two countries with one logistics backbone, and SAKO sits at the center of it. To be simple and blunt, the best time to need a weapon supplier is before the war starts. And SAKO made sure Finland and Sweden never had to find one during one. Their business model can be explained easily by breaking it down to 3 layers. Beretta Holding owns SAKO and handles global distribution. SAKO built the guns, and the Tikka brand then sells them at a lower price to the budget market, while SAKO holds the high-end market. Same factory, 2 price tiers. So think of products like iPhone and the iPhone SE. Daniel Defense. Daniel was nobody until they beat the established giants Knights Armament for the SOCOM contract by making the RIS handguard better. They made it free float around the barrel, while still being able to mount an M240 without touching the barrel. They designed a revolutionary bolt-up system that was so rugged it became the backbone of the Mark 18. By winning that contract, Daniel Defense got the ultimate marketing tool, which was the Special Ops Seal of Approval. While other companies act as assemblers, Daniel was running their business like an 18th century master forge with modern robotics. I'm talking about making their own parts from raw steel billets. And they were also making forging machines to make durable, cold hammer forged barrels. Suddenly, they are now making complete rifles. Geissele. Geissele is the face of the new URGI program. Simply, the handguard makes you immediately think of them right away. They are in the business of selling the brain and soul of the M4. By holding the contracts for the new URGI and the Super Select Fire triggers, Geissele ensures that even if a soldier's rifle has either the Colt or FN markings, the Geissele parts make the stock rifle better. In 2026, they expanded into the mid-range gas gun for SOCOM, and also diversifying into precision 6.5 Creedmoor rifles to ensure they own the accuracy niche of the military market. Sons of Liberty. Sons of Liberty is mostly a new company selling ARs in the civilian market, but it made its name after winning a SOCOM contract for the MK1, and they proved that a specialized, Texas-based shop could beat multinational conglomerates. They deal with Uncle Sam by focusing on duty-ready guns right out of the box. And they don't bid on large bulk of base model contracts. They just go straight for the Tier 1 market. And with their cult-like reputation speaks for the durability. Sig Sauer. Sig Sauer had their home run with the government. They never made any M4 for the military. Sig has previously worked on the Suppressor Upper Receiver Group program for SOCOM for about $48 million. And their Surge Upper can make any existing Colt or FN-M4 into an MCX hybrid. So basically, you can fold up the stock without a buffer. And their MCX was a hot item. It was kind of a slick rifle with no buffer. It can shoot 300 blackout and 5.56, and it was just different. Not exactly an M4, but any soldier can pick it up, and it felt like it's a 4.16 and an M4 hybrid. And with their MCX, really goal was to maybe one day dominate the US military small arms market by offering the MCX to replace the M4. Meanwhile, they started letting SOCOM play around with their 300 blackout Rattler to replace their PDWs. But nothing for the big military until they get to play a few rounds in the NGSW competition. Long story short, they wiped out everyone. And they got their rags to riches story that people will probably still talk about 50 years later. They not only sold the Army the idea to ditch the M4 completely and pick up the new M7, they also sold the M240 machine gun and the M18 service pistols. Not to mention the suppressors, the new 6.8 ammo contract, and all the back-end support. They make money through a lock-in strategy. But doesn't this look like the same situation it started with Colt many decades ago? But now it's 3 weapon platforms all under one roof. If you find this interesting, you may like this one too, and you can watch it here.